Welcome to another video blog from New Thought Life. I'm Kenny Down. Thank you for all your help and support of New Thought Life. Help in joining the community, signing up with us, just visiting our website and reading these things is a great joy to myself and those others that are helping with New Thought Life. Hope you've had a chance to take a look at the books. Hope you've had a chance to read Awakened Giant, Sleeping Spirit, that covers some of the things we'll be talking about on these video blogs. The thing I'd like to talk about today is a book that I read. I somehow really enjoy some of these older books. I love going to old bookstores. I love going to bookstores. When I go right to the spiritual section. I go to the religious book section. And I look for things that are of interest to me. One of the authors that I really like, I found a book, and it was edited by this author. Back in the 1930s, late 1930s, he edited a book. And there's been many books kind of around the same idea, but this book was called If I Had One Sermon to Preach, written in 1938. And the funny thing about it's not a book I'm going to recommend anybody get. I read the book. I read it again recently. And I found some things that were really great about it the second read through, which happens for me sometimes. The first time through I didn't really like it. What I didn't like about it was that many of the authors in this book went about, all came from the same genre. They came from the same religious background. They had the same, many of them very similar or the same spiritual beliefs. So of course, the sermon that if they had one sermon to preach, and that was the highlight of the book. It was the thought behind the book was that this editor was going to reach out to people all over the country. This book was from Europe, so he was mostly reading contacting people that were from the UK, and he asked these prominent ministers and preachers from his time to write just a few pages. If you had one sermon to preach, what would it be? And the disappointing thing was a lot of them said the same thing. Well, I won't go into exactly what it is, but it was all kind of a very similar slanted one religious view. But what I loved about the book, and the reason I got the book, was just its title really inspired me to think about that. If I had one sermon to preach, what would it be? And I think that's more important than me answering that question is for you, the viewer, to ask yourself that question. Write it down. Get that paper and pencil. Pull the notebook from your altar or wherever you keep your notebook. Get a notebook and start taking some notes and thinking about, what is it that I would say to other people about the spiritual life? How can I best get my concepts across? Thinking about it myself, I think, I would say that make the seeking of the spiritual life the single most important thing in your life. Really, really consider the value of that. There's, Dr. Stephen Hawking had his theory of everything. He was just obsessed, and he spent his life just thinking about the theory of everything that would tie in the theory of the very, very big to the theory of the very, very, very tiny, and would put everything together that would help to have the theory of how the universe evolved and how the universe is made up and all of the matter. I'm probably not explaining that in the very best way, but I really thought about that, his theory of everything. Isn't it more important that we should have a theory of everything, the unifying theory of religion? The unifying theory of religion, isn't that the most important thing? And for us each as individuals, isn't it important for us to have the unified spiritual experience, some in-depth spiritual awakening that allows us to have meaning in our life and allows us to be of real help to other people, that allows us to be happy, allows us to feel like the wholeness we feel, that there's no longer this emptiness in us, this hole that the wind just blows through. Some say that that's the type of thing I think about when I think about if I have one sermon to preach, if I have one thing that means the most to me, and the thing that is the single unifying theory of New Thought Life, it's just that, a new thought life. How can I best experience that? It can only be experienced in the spiritual realm. These spiritual experiences, these spiritual ideas, there's some things that I think you can't be clever enough to have one of these spiritual experiences. You can't be smart enough. There's no degree. I can't say to you, I'm going to have a spiritual experience. I'm going to have this whole new way of thinking on Thursday at 6 p.m. and put it on my Outlook calendar. It just doesn't work that way. I will never be smart enough. I'll never be clever enough. These things are always unplanned. They're always come to us at a time when we're not expecting it. I have deep experiences in meditation. I've been doing meditations on love now for quite a few weeks. And I'm having a deeper experience with love in my own life and the ability to love other people. But the thing is that I suppose in closing here, I'd just like to say to think about that. Make the spiritual life the most important thing in the growth of your spiritual experience, the maintenance and growth of the spiritual experience that you've had. Make that the most important thing in your life. Seek whatever is necessary, and all things worthwhile in life will take care of themselves. We hear this tagline, first things first, all the time, and I think that clearly, the real spiritual meaning behind that is seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all good things will follow. That if we seek that, so I have been seeking the spiritual life for many years myself, and I can tell you that through seeking the spiritual life, all these other good things have followed. I've had success in my business life. I've had success in my relationship and in my marriage. I've had success in being a parent. I've had success, and I don't claim to be the best businessman or the best husband or the best parent. I've made plenty of mistakes, don't get me wrong. But I've had these things with little effort on my own part, aside from seeking the spiritual way of life. When I've put that foremost in each of those areas have worked out seemingly, looking back at it now, with little to no effort on my part. It just has come to me. That's one of the great miracles of this thing. If I had one sermon to preach, make the spiritual life the most important thing in your life. And think about not what I'm saying about if you had one sermon to preach. What is it that you would say? How is it that you would like this to be in your own life? If you were called and given one chance to talk about the spiritual life and to write one sermon, sit down and write a few pages. Maybe even sit down tonight. If you can't do it tonight, tomorrow, but don't miss the opportunity to really think about this. If I had one sermon to preach, what would it be? So many of these things just fall off the periphery, just not important, not important, not important, not important. Many things are very interesting in the spiritual life. I find reading a lot of spiritual books very interesting. But a lot of the information is just simply not important. And I don't say that as a discredit to anything or anything that I've ever read. I just say that to that at its core value, you know, these things that that tend to have the deepest, most meaningful value are some of the small things in life. And I seem to really feel at the end of my life, whenever that comes, it's going to be these small things in my life that I'm going to remember the most. These small, meaningful things, these few moments I had, these realizations I had. So take the time, think about that. If I had one sermon to preach, thank you for all your help with New Thought Life and for being here with us today.